Cool.
Hi, everyone. Just want to say hi as folks are entering the webinar space right now. We can see that participants are coming in, so we'll just wait just 30 seconds or less before we kind of dive into introductions. I'm Casella. Just want to say welcome.
Thanks everyone for joining us. As you're coming in, if you can just share where you're coming from right now in the country or in the world, just throw in the chat, city and state. It's always great to see where people are. I think right now at this point in time in February, everyone is cold no matter where you are. So more Oklahoma is cold. I'm sure Coachella, people feel cold. Benton Harbor is for sure cold. Because I feel cold today in Tennessee and it's 45. So, because yesterday was 65. So, right, Cal? Cold in Dallas, Fort Worth.
It is very cold right now. Lots and lots of ice.
Oh, yeah, no. Hawaii, forget it. You're good. Even Hawaii has people feel cold.
Well, as folks are coming in, we'll go ahead and start with sort of the logistics of the next hour that we'll be spending together. This webinar will be recorded. So what that means for you is just a heads up. And we will also make the recording available afterwards for those who either have to maybe leave a little bit early or wish to share with friends and colleagues. You will probably notice, if you haven't already, that participants are muted by default. Panelists are typically in the webinar function the ones who are able to use the talk functionality. But with that being said, we really encourage questions and comments. And we hope that you will utilize both the chat functionality as well as the Q&A box. Either or is fine. As Adam sort of moderates, I will be checking the chat box periodically and responding to that. We might pitch a specific question to a specific panelist if there's one that really meets one of the panelists' wheelhouse. A little bit about us. So I'm Casella, as I mentioned. I'm the Director of Engagement and Advocacy Initiatives at Doriata College. And my colleague who is here with me today is Adam Smith, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. Thank y'all so much for being here. I'm Adam Smith. I serve as Vice President of College Access and Success for Doriata College Foundation. We are an educational, mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to ensuring all students get access to college, but not just to, but through college. So really committed through some of our landmark curriculum around study skills and test prep, but also committed to being a thought leader in these spaces and creating virtual conversations, building virtual content with real teachers, real educators, real people that are in the work, real trio professionals to talk about things that people are really facing. This series that we just started last month focuses on equity and even more on the inequities that have been exposed and further amplified and further magnified by the pandemics that we're facing. We're really in a historic time. I think people think that history is something that happened way back, but history is happening right now. No one has been through this converging. I mean, right now we have a second impeachment trial that's never happened in the history of our country. We have an insurrection that happened at the capital of our nation. We have a pandemic, COVID-19, that's affected all of us, right? And has killed almost 500,000 Americans at this point and many more worldwide, and has affected us in even bigger ways, right? By way of education, by way of joblessness and food insecurity that our educators, all of us, are at the front lines of facing every single day. We aren't just teaching students, we're supporting them, their families, and their communities, and we're also dealing with these things. And at the same time, we're dealing with civil unrest that's come from an amplification of racial insensitivity, an amplification of white supremacy and systemic racism, and a rising up of people all throughout our nation that's saying, you know, we got to reconcile these things. And those things are affecting. We have some of our colleagues here today from Louisville, Kentucky, where they still have not arrested the police that killed Breonna Taylor in her home. We have people here I'm from Minneapolis, right up the street from where George Floyd was murdered. So those things are also affecting our communities. And so it's these converging pandemics that we're all living in a really historic time that is affecting us and our students that we want to talk about today. So this is really about y'all. It's also about our outstanding panelists that have agreed to be with us here today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Also talk about where you teach or where you're an administrator, what district, what city. And then Ali brought up a great point. Please also talk about what modality, what are you doing, right? Are you remote 100%? If so, since when? Are you hybrid? Are you in person? So what are you doing right now as far as an educator? What is your district doing and your school doing? So Tao, can you get us started, please?
Hi, so my name is Tao Lei, and I'm currently in Dallas, Texas, and I'm teaching in Dallas ISD. And the school that I'm teaching at is Woodrow Wilson High School, and this is my 11th year of teaching. So I've been teaching math for the last 10 years. So this year I transitioned over to teaching engineering. So I teach the Introduction to Engineering course, design course, as well as the robotics course. This year we are 100% hybrid. All the teachers are expected to show up in person, 100%. And then the students have an option of selecting 2 days a week, 4 days a week, or they can do virtual. So this is my 11th year teaching, and hybrid is another species of its own. It's been challenging. It's been really difficult. I don't think anybody's ever done that before, and it's something that I'm learning every day, and even how to reach the students who are in class and at school, in class and on the at home, because there's only one of me and I really can't be in two places at once. So that is currently what I'm dealing with.
Awesome. Thank you, Tao. Alicia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Anthony. I am a 7th grade language arts teacher in JCPS. I've been teaching for 8 years now. We are 100% remote. They are not requiring the teachers to go into the building at all unless we need to. So we've been online for almost a year, coming up here soon. What was the other questions I was supposed to answer? I can't remember.
Tell everyone where JCPS is.
Oh, sorry. It's in Louisville, Kentucky. I live in Kentucky.
And you teach 7th grade language arts?
At an all-boys school.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia. John?
Hey, my name's John Ligian. I teach at Cleveland, Cleveland, Ohio. I work for CMSD, Cleveland Metropolitan School Districts. I work for John Adams. I've taught there for 3 years. My previous school was a remote only school called Odella. I taught there for 1 year. And I am 100% remote. And as Ms. Tao said, I have spent the last year since the COVID shutdown, teaching my coworkers how to navigate Google and move from pen and paper to everything being digital and everything being filled out in that form. So that's been my biggest challenge.
Thank you, John. And John Adams is high school and you're math, right?
Yeah, high school math. And I've shot the gambit 9th to 12th grade.
John's my student. So my students come in all ages, right? So it's super cool. It's super cool to see John doing the work. Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Minnis-White, and formerly of Louisville, Kentucky, born and raised, but I have been here in San Antonio for 5 years. I teach at Kipp. I know it's been 5 years. Kipp UPrep, which is a charter school here in San Antonio. I teach science. I'm actually the special ed co-teacher for science, and I also am the response to intervention coordinator here. So I have 9th through 12th grade, and we are in person, kids and students. Although, like today, we have 66 kids on campus. The majority of our students are online. A few teachers are allowed to have medical exemptions, but for the most part, we are required to be in person. TEA won't pay unless teachers are in person. And so that's where we are.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. Monica, hello. Good to see you.
Hello, I'm Monica Hunter. I'm an assistant principal with Jefferson County Public Schools in Louisville, Kentucky. I actually mentored Alicia her first year teaching, and she was amazing. So I'm happy to be able to serve on the panel with her. I taught at the middle school level for 8 years, and I was an instructional coach for 5 years, and I was at the elementary level as an assistant principal for 1 semester, and I was asked to move to one of our roughest schools to help get things cleaned up. 2nd semester last year throughout this year. So we are completely remote. Admin is expected, well, admin in my building, we're expected to go into work from time to time, but our teachers are not expected to go in at all. So our plan, the district's plan, not my plan, the district's plan is for us to go into a hybrid model the week after spring break for high school. But the district or the board is going to vote on that in a couple of weeks, but it's kind of, that's what it's going to be, I believe. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for sharing your information. I know that many y'all are sitting in buildings, sheltering in place. Some of y'all are at home and have kids sitting in the house. Ms. Anthony, I know you have them because I know them pretty well. So all y'all are navigating that. So I really appreciate y'all taking the time and lending your expertise. As far as all the people that are joining us, feel free. We want to make this a dialogue. So throw your questions in the chat if you have questions for the panel. I have stuff, as I always do, but it's always better to listen to them and listen to y'all and listen to your voices and what questions you have. So this is your opportunity as well to throw any questions and we'll just ask them. So I guess my first question, Alicia, when you think about the word equity as it relates to your school, your students, your work as an educator, what comes to mind? What are some of the things that pop in your head when you think about equity as it relates to your students and the work you do every day?
I think when I think of equity, I just think of equality and just inclusion and making sure that my kids feel included in our classroom and the lessons and the activities and things that we do. I try to create units that force them to discover more about themselves. That's one of my challenges. This is what it sounds like when I'm trying to teach. That. So if you're a student, right, and it's already funny, your teacher's on the computer, then you hear a baby in the background. How are you paying attention? I wouldn't be paying attention. I'd be like, oh, look at the baby. She sounds like the person. Like, she sounds so cute. Okay, so when I think of equality, I just think of inclusion and making sure that all of my kids feel seen and heard in some type of way. So we always have some type of presentation at the end of our units. I force them to use their speaking and listening skills. I learned a lot about the unit design and the project-based learning from Ms. Hunter. And it has really helped with just making sure that I am able to work with all of my students and have them use each other to work with each other as well.
Well, I think we have a question in the chat that I want to make sure and ask, because Alicia's office mates that I know very well, because Alicia's my daughter and those are my grandbabies, that not only is she teaching remote, she's teaching remote with an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a almost 2-year-old in the home. So that's a reality, right? That's a reality as an educator. First off, big snaps, right? Not just my kid, but all of the educators that are doing this work and trying to take care of themselves and their students. I mean, y'all are holding the nation in the palms of your hands at the same time trying to take care of yourself. So talk a little bit about, if you could, Danielle, you can kind of get this started. Kelsey's question, how are you practicing self-care? So things are really busy, things are really chaotic. It doesn't seem that educators, we know y'all are essential workers, right? But oftentimes we're thinking about the person at Target. We're thinking about a nurse. We aren't thinking about our educators getting hazard pay. And hazard doesn't mean, John, right, you're going into a building. Hazard can mean I'm sitting at home and my home office was not built to work from. It's built to sit at the computer for an hour or two, right? And so I've got carpal tunnel, I have back problems, I have eyesight problems. I mean, all of this stuff. So Danielle, how are you practicing healthcare or self-care? And then we're going to kind of go around and ask everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because that was actually the theme of our faculty meeting yesterday. One of the things that we do, diversity and equity and inclusion is very important for Kipp. And we have what are called affinity groups, where you meet with your affinity. So in the Black group, but all of us, the whole school was talking about self-care. So we talked about how especially difficult it is for Black teachers and just being Black right now and dealing with constant trauma response on top of a pandemic. You mentioned George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and how, for me being from Louisville, how hard that's been on me. There's just been a lot, personally and professional, that's just really worn on us. So we talked about what are we doing to kind of move away from that, because you can't get away from your race. You can't get away from who you are. But one of the things is like having our time as an affinity group, we actually use that time to kind of just be sounding boards off of each other, which for us is relaxing. And then a lot of us talk about how we just turn off. Most of them are our parents. So the focus is on home. And I think it's been really hard for us because we are in person. So there's the added element of every day there's a COVID alert. One of our schools, because we're a K through 12 building, one of our schools, there's another positive case, and it just overwhelms us every time. And so we just, it's like you get to the point where you just have to turn off your email. You have to turn everything off and just focus on being at home. And that's about all we can do. Luckily, we've always had warm weather, so it's always easy to get out and walk. But yeah, I mean, self-care is limited, but we're trying.
Well, and some of that, Danielle, and because we know each other, right, that you have to recognize each other's trauma. I think one of the challenges we've had, and this is just my soapbox as a nation, is we want to turn past things. Well, this is over now. 2020 is over. There's a reason why this has happened. And a lot of it is because we aren't dealing with our stuff, right? You don't talk about John and I used to talk about this when he was in undergrad, the things you don't talk about at family gatherings. Well, this is what leads to that, right? This is what leads to it because people have been traumatized. How January 6th affects Black people is really different of how it affects other groups. It scares everybody, but Black people, that building was built by slaves. That building was cleaned up by Black people. The guy who's the hero was a Black guy. And it affects us very differently when we see bodies of innocent Black people being murdered in the middle of the street. And so, Danielle, I want to just make space for that because those feelings are valid and that's the truth. And I think that that's one of the struggles we have as educators is if we can't make room for each other, just like the trauma we're dealing with as individuals, we can't make room for our students. There's no way we can, right? How are you practicing self-care as a young professional teacher? This is, now you've been in a couple districts in a couple different states. How are you practicing self-care in this season? And how has that changed and evolved over your career as an educator?
So when I first started teaching, it was like, taboo for you to take a day off. Like, if you feeling like, I'm not feeling good. I would show up to work like sick as a dog and my students would be like, you need to go home. Like, it's like, I only have a little bit of pneumonia. It's not a lot of pneumonia, like it was pretty bad. And that was the culture with the students as well. Like they would come in, they would be sick, they would be sneezing, sharing Kleenex and all this stuff. Like we just literally didn't take care of ourselves. Like, the teachers and the students, all that stuff as well. Like, if you're sick, you're like forced to go to school or forced to go to work. It's just this culture of can't really take a day off if you're not feeling well. So that's been my experience for the last 10 years. And I think for the first time this year, if I need a break or if I can't come in because I'm like, I don't feel, not if I'm like sick, especially if I'm sick, then I'm not going to show up. But if like mentally I'm not there today, like I'll just take a day off. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. So like that's one thing that's changed for me and for some of my students as well, because most of the students have the option of coming to school and half of them do choose to come to school. But on the days that, they're not feeling well or they're not feeling like they want to show up to school, like they can stay home and they still can get caught up because of all their lessons are online. So I can see that culture shifting a little bit. There are some aspects of the online platform that I hope that we continue to use is just having these lessons available for all the students, just to ensure equity, just because if they miss one day, they're not a week behind. And I think, something to take with that. And then also just for me personally is just waking up early and just working out and just making sure that if I'm not feeling good mentally or physically, it's just to, just not go to school. So, yeah.
Well, and it's crazy on how a year ago, seeing somebody's kid on a Zoom would have just mortified. I mean, people, but now it's amazing how tolerant we are of each other. It's amazing how our ideas of what work was, what a work day was, and what it had to be for this external gratification that we needed, that's all changed a little bit. And it's going to be interesting how, kind of to Tao's point, and John, I want you to speak to this along with the idea of self-care. One of the things that's going to come out of this is a whole shift in how people work, because people are going to demand flexibility. People are going to demand, look, I want to get home and get my kids off the bus. And if you aren't going to let me work and do that, I'm going to find somebody who will, right? I mean, at some point, especially with millennials and Gen Zs who are just like, forget it, I'll go work a side hustle. That's going to change. And these modalities at this point, we kind of let it out of the bag now. We got people all around the country in here. We have people in Hawaii in this room, right? This has become a really powerful tool that can deal with some issues of inequity and access, right? If we use it right. John, talk a little bit about how you are, because you talked about working with some of your colleagues on how to use technology. You're a great technology guy. You're an engineering major for a while, really sharp. Talk a little bit about how you've leaned into virtual to be a better educator in this time. Rather than resisting it, how have you leaned into it and maximized it to be a better educator and better improve the lives of your students?
So, in my opinion, online education is all about organization and preparation. And once you get your routine down, and once you figure out what your routine is, you can do a week's worth of work in a day. And my whole scope is reaching all my students, no matter where they're at. And I mean that in like complete totality. So I don't care if I'm talking about the kids that are on a 3rd grade math level, or if I'm talking about the kid that just got hired by Amazon and is now making more money than his mom's and is paying all the bills at the house. So I'm trying to reach both of these kids. And what I've done for my colleagues is I kind of set up a groundwork and I said, this works. And I fall back onto the principles that like all of us have used in the classroom forever. I use a guided note system. I use a check of understanding. I use a Google form as a check of understanding. I let the kids rate the lesson at the bottom of the check of understanding so I can get that feedback from my students. I go into my guided notes, their Google form, so I can go in there and I can make comments and ship them back if the kids, missed a problem, or if somebody turned in some blank work, because I'm sure all of us have dealt with that at some point in time if you're dealing with some remote. So, and I'll go in and I'll be like, hey, you missed page 2 and 3, and I'll highlight the whole page. And I was like, send this back to me. And then I've got office hours and my kids got my phone number. So at 9 o'clock at night, every now and then Isaac Williams will call me and his brother Isaiah will be struggling and he'll call me for Isaiah. And I got a couple of kids that, they work 2nd shift at Amazon. I got some kids working 3rd shift at Amazon. I get some calls at 7 a.m. Hey, Mr. Wagon, I'm trying to get my homework done. So it's tiresome on that end of it. But at the same time, I can get more done when I decide to sit down and work. Even if I get up at like 3 in the morning, sleepless night, get up at 3 in the morning. And I say, okay, the house is quiet. Nobody's up. None of the kids are up. I got 2 hours. Let's go. You can crank out a week worth of work. You can get your lessons done, get everything laid out. And then after that, it's just back to that relationship and back to that one-on-one time where you set up, or small group time where you set up and you're like, hey, come to class. You watch the video, you've got the guided notes. Come to class with questions. Let's talk about, what you don't understand. And for the first time, because I always heard about flipped classroom when I was going through college. And this is the first time I've been able to implement it successfully. Now, there's other issues, but the kids that are coming to class, they're killing it.
Well, and John, you're such an innovator, right? And Alicia put in the chat and it's spot on, right? It comes down to us. I feel like, so my entire staff, I work full-time for a university in Minnesota. I have never met them face to face. I've never met Allie, and she's like my sister, and I have never met her face to face. That's crazy. And some of the face-to-face stuff creates some masks and some foolishness and some mess. You can plug into each other and walk away. You can build I found some really authentic relationships virtually. It just comes down to how much you're that get off my grass guy and I want to go back to, when everything was great in the past. Everything went great, Joe. Not for us, not for these students, not for the students in Cleveland. Everything went great. COVID has really helped some of the economic things that have had to happen with technology, with access that students didn't have before. So students have some things they may have not had before. So some of this has been really a revolution that I think how we educate, how we learn from a higher ed space, students are not going to pay to live in a residence hall anymore. They're just not going to do it. Why? Why would I go to class at 8 in the morning when I can sit in my residence hall and do it? I may still want to do the athletic events at Alabama, but I'm not going to go live in a residence hall for twice the amount it costs to go to class when I'm just sitting in there doing my work anyway. So I think the consumer relationship is going to be different. Monica, can you talk a little bit about self-care? And then at the same time, because you're the only admin, right? You're Ms. Hunter, right? So can you talk about, you said the district is voting, the board is voting if they're going to have hybrid, teachers and administrators, educators being essential workers. What is it going to take for you and your teachers who you lead, who you're responsible for, who you care about, who are in your community? What is it going to take for them to feel safe? Because whether the board says go or not, people have a right to feel safe, all people, all the time. So can you talk about those two things a little bit?
Yes, so I'm going to talk about my own personal self-care. Being home has driven me almost insane because I'm so used to being out and about and moving. And I have 3 boys, they're 25, 20 and 19. And my 19-year-old, I'm just so used to running him around and all that stuff. And I went from running around literally from 6:30 a.m. to like 9 at night to being home all the time. And even when I go into work, I have a whole wing to myself. I don't see anybody. And so I'm a social person. And so it's really been difficult for me to adapt to this new normal. And so I found that building authentic relationships and taking the space like house party or Zoom or FaceTiming people. I know that may not seem like self-care, but for somebody like me that is used to being with people, that has really helped me tremendously because I'm able to not just connect with them via text or just to hear their voice, but I can see their face. And so it's like they're with me. And so that's something that we've also done at our school. And we schedule a time where the staff can come together like we are right now. And instead of having a faculty meeting, we have game night, or we have other avenues for us to be social and actually have conversation and see each other outside of academy meetings or outside of those things, because we're home. Some of us are home alone because we're single. Some of us have our families, but we're used to seeing other people and being social with other people. So that's been very important to me and our staff in general. Something else, we have what's called Wellness Check Wednesdays. And one thing that was suggested was to do, because our gyms are open now, but they have limited capacity and it's hard to get in there and work out without being paranoid. Then you have to mask up and you can't breathe because you're on the treadmill trying to go and you're masked up and somebody over there is coughing and their mask is down. Now am I going to get COVID? It's just a whole big old mess. And so I found that if I get up 5:30 and I just work out like 10 to 15 minutes a day, that helps to rejuvenate me and helps me to get my mind prepared for the day. And it's become a part of my routine, which I'm really thankful for because it's helped me, build my health, but it's also helped to release those endorphins so I can be my best self for the day. So that's something else that I've done based on our Wellness Check Wednesdays. As far as making sure our staff feel safe, we just sent out a survey. It's funny you said that, to our staff, well, our staff, students, and parents, but to our staff. And we're asking them, because we know that they have anxiety. We have some teachers that have said they don't want to come in the building because they're, this is an exaggeration, but some stuff is just outlandish because their thumb will hurt and they can't be in the building. Well, your thumb would hurt whether COVID was going around or not. So they have these outlandish reasons why they can't come in the building. And I know it's because they're filled with angst because of COVID, because our school is one of the most, one of the roughest schools in Kentucky, hands down. And so we can have all of the signs up, but there's going to be some students that won't wear a mask. There's going to be some students that'll use it as a slingshot. And so I know that our teachers are a little nervous about that because they want to make sure they can go home to their families, because we have had some students that have passed due to COVID. Some of the families have passed or family members have passed. And we've had some family members of staff. I lost my grandmother and my uncle within 5 days of one another, and they lived together from COVID. And so we have all of these levels of anxiety that we're dealing with just by going in the building. So we have offered or provided a survey for our teachers to take to try to figure out what they're nervous about as far as coming in the building is concerned. And once we get that data, our goal is to offer small groups, not just for our students and parents, but our staff as well, and make sure that they have the resources that they need. We are able to talk through it. We have mental health therapists that are part of our staff. We also have our youth service center coordinator that does some small groups. And so we're going to make sure that our teachers that are willing and open to this, they participate in small groups. And then if they can't afford therapy on their own, because some are going to need therapy, we do have our mental health therapist on staff, and it's free to our staff just in case they need that one-on-one time to just say, okay, I thought I was going to be ready for this, but when Johnny came in here and he turned the cartwheel and knocked over the desk and his mask flew off, and then he coughed, I almost lost it. He said, you can't cough anymore. You can't cough. You can't have regular allergies or a cold, not these days. And so we just want to make sure that we have those resources in-house for our teachers. Along with that, we also have therapists from outside of our school that are independent contractors for our school. So we can have them come in, and if we have an influx of issues that arise, then we'll have those resources on hand to make sure that our staff feels comfortable.
That's really good. I think just the things that you're doing, like to care for yourself, are so important, right? And acknowledging that we have to do that, because being an educator is a foot washing profession. Foot washing isn't about you, right? It's about service, right? And it reminds me, and I always say this, of when the flight attendant gets on the speaker, when you get on the plane, and says, you know, the pressure is going to fall, and if it drops, you have to put a mask on yourself first, right? And then you can help others. So really making sure that you're not just physically feeling safe, but you're feeling emotionally, spiritually, mentally safe and cared for, and that you're giving yourself, as Tal pointed out, the room. Look, I need a day, right? So we're going to pivot real quick, and I wanted to ask this specifically to Alicia, because she and I would have these talks when she was in undergrad about education and what schools were hard to teach in and what schools were easy to teach in this world where they taught you how to do lesson plans and didn't really teach you what it really is like to be an educator. And so for most of y'all, you work in schools and school districts, and for several of y'all, you're in a whole countywide system. So you could easily transfer to, because Louisville, Jefferson County, there's urban schools, there's suburban schools, and there's also rural schools in that county. And so you don't even have to leave the county or give up any benefits or any seniority, because you could just slide to what people think is an easier building, an easier student population. You notice I'm saying easier. So Alicia, what's kept you at Olmsted, right? What's kept you in a school that's 99% free and reduced lunch, 7th grade, God help us, all boys, right? Oh, Lord. But talk a little bit about why you've stayed there, because you've had opportunities to go elsewhere, and people would think those places were easier. What's kept you there? And then John, I'm going to ask you the same question, as well as you, Ms. Min.
I've stayed at Olmsted because of the kids. At this point, I feel like if I leave, I'm like deserting them. Like, oh, dang, because we don't get very good teachers, unfortunately, or we do get good teachers that are run off by the students because they don't have good classroom management. And so I feel like because I'm an okay educator and I can teach in this demographic and they do well, I just feel like there's few of me that they'll get. And if I leave, then what will they have? And so that's where I'm at right now, where I'm kind of like deciding like, oh gosh, and it's just because of the kids. Like, I just feel like they deserve the best that anybody could give, that they could give them. And so And it's funny because I'm actually thinking about trying to go over to work with Ms. Hunter at Iroquois. And so that's why I'm just like, it's funny because like that's literally right across, they're right around the corner from each other. So my students, they turn around and go right over there to Miss Hunter. I ask the kids all the time, I'm like, y'all know Miss Hunter? They're like, yeah, we know her. So yeah, it's like, I'm literally like, hey, y'all got something over there? I'm thinking about coming over there. So there's something's wrong with me too, clearly. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go over here and mess with these goons, but I don't know. I feel like you just get more bang for your buck. It's just more love, more appreciation. Like, I don't know, they just need us. And I feel obligated to give them everything that I can just because they don't have it.
Well, I think the thing you said that was really important, and just talk about that for a second. You talked about we get young teachers that know how to teach, but they don't know how to manage, right? And they don't know how, and then my guess is, you have some people know how to manage, but don't know how to teach, right? I might go to manage them and, treat them like, we're at, the penitentiary, but not be able to serve them and educate them. Talk about how that's different and how that works for you.
If you don't have any classroom management, you are unable to show your teaching skills. You're unable to implement the lesson that you just worked so hard on, that you're so excited to give to your kids. If you can't manage your classroom, you cannot, you can't give your lesson. It just can't happen. And then if you're so focused on keeping the kids in straight lines and focused and like, y'all sit here and don't talk and do this, they're too busy fighting against you. Like, I don't want to be up in this classroom with you. Like, and if I have to sit up in here with you, I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm gonna disrupt. I'm gonna be sneaky and do some stuff. Like, so yes, you think you're running a type shit, but they're not learning anything because they're just sitting there with attitudes and not doing anything. They're not enjoying the learning process. If there is any learning going on, they're just sitting there. I think a lot of times too, the teachers, they're afraid with our demographic, they're afraid to let the kids go and let them learn from each other. They think, well, he don't know nothing, so what can he teach this next person over here? And as the years have gone on, I found myself like gradually getting out of that and really just letting, my classroom be student-centered and allowing my students to control what's going on. Like, this is the expectation, but how you all get there is up to you. I'm here with you, but the expectation is we're going to get this done. But if you want to lay out on the ground and get it done, lay out on the ground. You want to sit on top of the desk and get it done, sit on top of the desk. You want to sit at a circle table, sit at the circle table. We want to listen to music today, let's listen to music today. You need an earbud in, so it's kind of meeting my students' needs. And I think that's one thing that like teachers have to, make sure that we're working on, just, because with what we have going on, the kids, you just got to get to know them so that you can figure out what they need so that you can best help them.
Well, and John, I want you to talk about the same thing because I know your heart and why you're at John Adams, right? Because your background's completely different. Corporate chef all over the world, thought he was going to be an engineer. And then some dude said to you, bro, you should be a math teacher. You're like kids? I was like, yeah, John, they're going to love you, man. If you lead a line as a chef, you can lead a classroom. So I think the thing that Alicia's saying that's so spot on is the same thing we want from each other, our students want from us too, right? They want us to meet them where they are. They want us to give them room. Sometimes you're having a day. All right, just go sit there today. Because in the end, you get in a power struggle with a 7th grader or a 2-year-old there in Alicia's house or a high school student, the student's always going to win. You ain't no power over them because ultimately your goal is them learning and becoming their best selves. So if they sabotage that, you lost too. So what are they going to do? Show you by not learning? Well, but that hurts you. So in the end, sometimes you got to give and you got to back up and you got to give them room and you got to not prescribe them to what your ideas, oftentimes we hear about parental involvement. And what I hear when I always push back on educators when they say that to me, when I consult with them, because you don't want parents involved the way they want to be involved. You want them involved the way you want them involved, right? And so you have to, if you want parents involved, especially parents that are BIPOC, and have different lives and different lifestyles and different cultures. When you say, I want you involved, you can't say, I want you involved in this Eurocentric way. You want to be involved? Monica's involved with her kids the way she want to be involved. Ain't nobody gonna tell her what to do with her own children. And I've never met a parent that didn't want more for their children and want a better life. Now, they may not have known how to get there or how to make that happen, but they wanted it, right? John, talk a little bit about why you're at John Adams, why you haven't went somewhere else in Cleveland Metro, right? And how you really deal with that balance between managing your students and at the same time ensuring that they learn and giving them space to be, like you said, third grade reading level all the way up to, hey, you're taking AP classes, third grade math level, I'm sorry.
So it's, all right, I'll deal with the first part first. The reason I'm at John Adams is because, like Alicia said, I feel like I'm abandoning the kids if I leave. That's why I coach. That's why I do pretty much everything I do there. I run a couple of after school programs. I do some stuff. Like if I left that school, in my heart of hearts, it's not who would they get to replace me. It's who would do the job that I did. Because replacing me is easy. You can put a body in there. Like substitute teachers replace us on a regular basis. That doesn't mean that they can do the job we did. That just means that there's a body in the room. My first year there, I got double-digit growth in math. I didn't know if I was going to be a good teacher, but I'm teaching the inner city school demographic of some of the poorest kids in the state of Ohio. Like even compared to the rural kids, my kids got a medium income of someplace between $13,000 and $22,000. Most of my kids are single family or single parent family. It is a very ethnic school. I got one white kid. I think he's there by mistake. He got lost. I know that's terrible, but it's the truth of the situation. And I've got African-American, and I believe there's 2 Hispanic students in the building now. But my kids are at the bottom of it. Like I'm in the neighborhood that you read about on the TV. The cops don't get called to the neighborhood, they patrol it. There's shootings on a regular. I buried personally in the last 3 years 4 students. I've had multiple students lose mom, dad, uncle, aunt, grandma, grandpa, brother, sister, cousin, multiples in months of period of time. So when it comes to meeting a kid where they are, at first it's that relationship. So like anybody that says anything is done without the relationship with the students is lying to you. You go back to college and you can tell them all the planning in the world doesn't work without a relationship with your kids, and they got to trust you. If they don't trust you, then you've been lied to because they're not going to work with you. They're not going to do anything for you. And I'll tell you now that all of my students don't like me. I got a couple of young ladies and a couple of dudes. They don't think I'm a good person at all. Now they did mess around and learn something, and they may or may not have passed the algebra OST in Ohio, but they don't like me very much. What was the second part of it, Adam?
I don't know. That's really good though. You know what, John? I didn't bring you up and pour into you for them to like you. I poured into you for you to change the world. And the beauty of it is that's what you're doing. Hi, Caleb. Kelly.
Hi. Sorry, he just kept saying, he's like, he's not saying anything.
Hi, Caleb. Hi, buddy. Yeah, that's Caleb. He's the best. So I think one of the cool parts is being able to pour into people that you see something in them that they don't see. And I think just like as coaches, right? I don't need every student that was my student, now 25 years in this business, to love me. I need them to see that I cared about them And that may not have been like, that at Akron, I had a reputation of, oh no, Adam doesn't play that. He's going to kick you out. He's going to take your scholarship because he loves you. See, oftentimes people think that caring for, and that this is what I'm hearing from you and from Alicia, and even from some of Monica's words, is that sometimes people get into education, and it reminds me of Remember the Titans, where Coach Boone is saying to Coach Yost, I don't see you pulling the white kids to the side. I don't see you catering to them. You only protecting the brown ones from Big Bad Boom. And at the end of the day, our students need, they feel consistency, expectation, and honesty, like a baby needs to be swaddled. They feel the walls. And none of us want to feel this. Well, and that's how our kids feel in their lives. And so if they can come, and it doesn't matter if you're an elementary school student or you're a graduate student or a grown man coming back to get his college degree at Akron, if you know where the walls are, that feels like love, that feels safe. And that's what relationship has to be, but it has to be consistent and it has to be in your truth. It can't be not knowing your own stuff. See, you know your own stuff. So one of the questions, Tal, I want to ask you is, so we have a new Secretary of Education, praise God. Let's just take a moment, praise God. Okay, yes, we have a new Secretary of Education who was an educator, even cooler, right? So a Secretary of Education who actually has been an educator. So there's a loss of learning, Tal, right? And I'm going to ask all three of y'all, Monica and Danielle, this too. There's a loss of learning, but there's also a huge loss of development in our kids, right? My grandbabies are all three of them in the house. My granddaughter has not known a world without COVID and without home. She doesn't have time to interact with other kids. My grandson, who you just saw, 4 years old, a quarter of his life has been spent in this. So if you were to recommend to the secretary anything to remediate not only the loss of learning, but the loss of social cultural, what would you recommend for him to remediate it? And what would it take to go beyond whatever your state is, the 185 contact days, right? What would it take to say, you know what? Because for the middle class kids and the wealthy kids in the private schools, they go get remediated because their parents are going to pay for it, right? So how can this happen where we do this equitably, where students who have lost so much and so much time can get some of that back, while at the same time, teachers and educators can get what they need, especially that deal with students who don't have those financial needs?
So we've actually talked a lot about this at our school as well, just because there is a huge learning loss. Like the students who are at school right now, who are with me in person, those are the students who, they don't have a space at home to work, reliable internet. So, that's why they're at school and they're, slowly catching up. And those who are at home have what they need and more, right? And that's why, they're at home versus choosing to come back. But that's not really a choice for a lot of, for everybody, since we're 100%, we're hybrid and a lot of the teachers on here are virtual. And I think it's not just adding more time to the calendar or throw more money at the calendar that's going to solve our inequity problem. That's not going to be the answer to this. It's what are we doing with the time that the students are in school? What are we providing for the students who show up, who hasn't been at school for months? Like, are we giving them what they need? We can throw all this money, we can add more time, but if we're still doing the same thing that we've been doing prior to COVID, it's not going to really solve any problems. It's like what we really need are teachers, like John, like you were saying, that are highly qualified to teach. Like we have positions at our school that are still unfilled, right? So we have seats, we have teachers so many teachers that quit at the beginning of the school year because they were forced to come back. So we have positions that are not filled because of that, because being virtual was not an option. And we, by putting a substitute in there, the kids are going to continue to lose their not be able to have, to meet, to, what's that word, to close that gap, right? To keep learning. So we need highly qualified teachers to actually teach the students who are not, they're not able to learn from home. And we need to be able to be flexible, like what you're saying. Like if, there are ways to reach the students online and at home, the relationships that you build with them. But I don't know, just being flexible with the teachers, the highly qualified teachers, and treat us like professionals, and, value us, like say, hey, you're a great teacher. We need you to help our students. And I think that will be what will help the students with a lot of, lost learning time.
That's great. Danielle, you're charter public school, right? I like to add the public after charter because people think charter is a public school. So you're at a charter public school. So there are opportunities, right, to do things a little differently. So if you're talking to the new Secretary of Education, what do you recommend for him on how we narrow this gap, how we decrease some of the learning loss, how we make up just for the time that students, some of the safest place our students could be is at school, and many of them have been in the most unsafe places, their homes, physically and emotionally, that are around for them. So how can we not only remediate the education loss, because Tao's right with that, but how can we remediate a lot of the developmental loss that once these students turn 20 and start acting like 16-year-olds, that's not cute, right?
No. Yeah, I do have to say that there are a lot of advantages to being at Kipp. It's not too different than what we had at Olmsted, but yeah, I do feel like the district does not regulate us. Our principal is the one who says what we can do, and she'll go and fight for us if we have things. One of our big things that we did to make some changes was we started what's now called the Kipp BSU, which is our Black Student Union. We are a predominantly Hispanic school with a very small Black teacher and Black student population, but we wanted a safe place for our kids where they could be their most authentic selves, because we were seeing that was an issue. And so having that, I think one of the things that is hard for the traditional public school is to just, buck the traditions and say, okay, we're not going to do what everybody else does. We're going to do what's best for our kids. And there's also that they may want to do it, but they don't know how to do it. Whereas with us, it's like, okay, we're just going to try this and see how it works. And that's what we've been doing. And I think a lot of times there's so many regulations and so many, but we don't want to offend anybody, or we don't want to do. And what's been great about watching how things are done at the charter is that we don't care because, we're just going to do this because it's what's right for our kids. The fact that we are an international baccalaureate school for all, regardless of ability level, I think that is one of those things that needs to be nationwide. AP for all, IB for all. I don't care if the kid has an IEP, if they're a 504. I don't care if the kid's nonverbal. If they can pass an IB test, if they can pass an AB test, and we have proof of that. Why is it that when you look at the numbers of kids who are in these AP classes, A, it's still not enough minorities, and B, it's definitely not kids with disabilities. It's not enough of a representation. And in 2021, that just doesn't make sense anymore. As everybody has said, now that we have the technology, when you have a kid, we've tested kids online. We did AP testing online. We've done ACT all the time. And the kids over and over again prove that they can do it regardless of their socioeconomic status or their ability level. That to me is the bell we need to be ringing, that there needs to be more of a focus on dual credit, AP, IB. There need to be more IB schools. And for all kids. It's not a magnet program. It's not a few select and you fill out an application. It's every single kid. And then if some kids can't do it, you know, you move them to a different place, but they have to have that opportunity to try. We are college prep for all. Every single student that comes through here applies for colleges, has letters of recommendation, and every single student gets accepted. They may not all choose it, but at least 90% of the kids that come out of here do. And that is ending that generational poverty, that cycle right there. I mean, that's what the nation, that's what our education national guy needs to be looking at.
Well, and it's one of the things when I was the education guy for the city of Rockford, in Illinois, there were no charters in Rockford. And we went out and recruited some of the best charters in the country, and not charter operators. We recruited educators that started charter schools. So it was like led by y'all, and brought 4 of them, had to change Illinois charter law. But one of the things that was really cool that I love about the charter movement in many ways is because charters, yeah, you don't have those boxes and you can reward best practice. Because one of the struggles sometimes for educators is I'm over here killing it, buying my own supplies and putting in all these hours. And then I got my colleague down the hall that's not working as hard, right? And the challenge in the profession is there's no way to give the master teacher more money. Hey, you're killing it. Hey, Alicia, I want you to come. Hey, Tao, I want you to come work for me. And we should do it like a football coach. I want Wygan to come down to Knoxville. So what is it going to take, Wygan, for me to get you to come down here? Got to get you a house? You know, because really at the end of the day, those are some of the things that it's going to take, and that creativity to where you can keep, like Tao said, you can keep some of the best educators and the master educators, you can keep them in the field. You can draw them to it and you can keep them in it, because every other field, you're getting paid more money if you're better than the guy down the hall. Right? And you're a sought after commodity. And some districts are doing that now in pieces, but not as much as it could or should be. Monica, what would you recommend to the new Secretary of Education to remediate some of the damage, is maybe a good word, that's been done to some of our most minoritized and marginalized students during this?
I know one thing that needs to happen is outside of the academics, but looking at the socio-emotional learning and well-being of our students and making sure they have those resources, because we can't go from a year of civil unrest, pandemic, food scarcity to school and expect them to perform. And so especially at schools like mine. So what resources will we have to make sure the students have their basic needs fulfilled so they can focus once it's time for them to learn? And then I think it's very important for them to pour into our teachers. And I think we have so many standards that sometimes teachers don't know what to teach. And so coming up with a system, even if it's funding for the teachers to come together and decide on what are these essential standards that we're going to focus on. What are out of the 100 standards that I'm expected to teach, what are the 6 to 10 that are essential for students to have and master, so we can actually look at the progress towards mastery for them to go to the next level and still be ready and prepared for that next level. And something else, I think, and I'm a proponent for this, standards-based grading. So instead of students having 1,000 assignments and we don't know what they know, we can look at these few assignments that target those essential standards and see if they know the standard. And then why do they have to stay in this grade level? And once they master those standards, let's see if we can have an accelerated program. So once they finish that, especially in our low performing schools, because I think a lot of our students, they're capable of doing the work. They don't have access, like Danielle was saying, they don't have access that higher level stuff. And so they they don't perform, and then they misbehave. Well, if I'm being challenged where I should be challenged, and I have a chance to graduate early because I finished this coursework and I can do this, then I'm going to enjoy school and I'm going to do what I have to do to graduate instead of causing all the trouble and the drama. So that's a soapbox that I've been on. And that is one reason why I want to be a high school principal, because I'm going to have an accelerated program where they're focused on the essential standards. And I want to fast track our students to graduation, to not just increase graduation numbers, but to give our Black and brown students the opportunity to graduate and then be successful once they master those essential standards. So instead of looking at the thousands of standards that we're expected to teach, what are the standards that we need them to learn, and we can push them to mastery so they can perform and they can be successful beyond high school.
Yeah, love it, love it. I love the conversation around trauma-informed practice, right? I mean, that should be mandatory, right? Teachers, educators should understand trauma, understand the trauma that affects our students, no matter who they are and how trauma manifests itself, and that everything has to come from that lens. Allie is a pro in her work and her graduate work in these areas. And I love the idea of limiting the scoreboard. I mean, what is all this? I mean, if we don't know as educators all this stuff that we're being measured on, how does the student, right? It's just assignments for the sake of assignments. At the end of the day, we have to have a limited scoreboard. So I think those things are really, really important. One of the things as I close, and I want to thank y'all so much for your time. Any questions that you have, Allie will be putting out the recording. One of the things that I want to bring to the forefront is some of the work of our nonprofit foundation, especially around study skills and test prep, PSAT, SAT, and ACT. In the past, we would offer live boot camps, and we've been doing them via Zoom and face-to-face. One of the things that we've done, especially with our low SES schools, is we've created a subscription service, and Allie will put some links in the chat, where students or schools can get subscriptions that basically are recordings of each one of the sessions, 6 sessions for study skills, the 4 for ACT, and the 3 for SAT. And students can watch them in bites. So they can receive the same prep, but it isn't, hey, John, I'm going to force your kids to come sit in a 5-hour Zoom to learn to be prepped for the SAT or the ACT in Cleveland. So it's one of the things that we have adapted, in particular for our low SES and our schools that are really struggling, and our Upward Bound and our TRIO ETS programs, to make sure that students can still be prepped, but be prepped at their own pace and be prepped at their own time. And I think that's one of the things I was hearing from Danielle and from all y'all, is we got to just change how we think about it. If a student's up at 3 in the morning, we got to figure it out. How are we going to help them learn at 3 in the morning? That doesn't mean we're going to be up. So that's one of the cool things that being a nonprofit that we've done, is put that subscription together where a district for $1,000 for a month can buy unlimited views of students, where they can go on this specific website with their own login and password for their district and their program, and just watch the prep. Study skills, SAT, ACT, and students can watch it at their own pace. So Allie shared some of that information in the chat. We're here to partner with you, help you, magnify, amplify your work, and thank you for everything y'all are doing for, not just for our young people. People are always thanking our military, and rightfully so, and our first responders, but our educators are serving America at the highest level. And that's never, ever more apparent than it is right now. So thank you all so much for being here. Panelists, thank you all so much for taking the time. Y'all give them some virtual snaps. We appreciate y'all. Y'all be safe, take care of yourselves, and we will look to see you at our next webinar, which is on February 25th, right, Allie? Where we're going to talk with academic advising professionals and student success professionals around the same issues from a college standpoint about equity. Thank you all so much. Be safe.